Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Pitchside Perspective podcast. This week we're delighted to be joined by ex-Football League defender Mark Phillips, aka the Neurodivergent Footballer. Mark's going to be sharing his journey as his recent diagnosis as having ADHD and the battles he's had to face throughout his professional career. He'll be speaking about the education he's recently taken on and how he's now supporting the next generation of players, parents and coaches. This episode is a real eye-opener, and it helps you to learn all around ADHD and the neurodivergent footballer. So sit back and enjoy.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So Jack, we just had the international break. Are you happy that Premier League's back?
Yeah, happy England qualified too. Not that was, I don't think, ever in question. The stats over the last few years of World Cup qualifiers for England's kind of crazy. Not conceding goals, scoring lots of goals. But yeah, the Premier League definitely bigger entertainment value.
Yeah, you say obviously England qualifying, but there's a few other interesting nations out there that have qualified. Cape Verde being the first time they're in there. I think Jordan, Uzbekistan. I think with the World Cup obviously growing to number of teams, there's going to be some interesting teams and games going on, right?
Yeah, and now as it gets bigger, I think it's easy to look at the kind of downside of these qualifying games that aren't very competitive and maybe too busy of a schedule at the World Cup itself. Then you get these positives of nations. You saw the celebrations of some of those countries that have never qualified before and are qualified. So that is the positive side of it.
Yeah, but we're back to the Premier League. It's one of those. To me, it always disrupts it. You go and watch a few weeks of Premier League and then you miss out. And what a great way to start the Premier League. Then what I think is the greatest rivalry in English football, United-Liverpool on Sunday. Hence why I'm wearing and representing. I'm not very confident, no. Jack, if you were to give a prediction for that game, what would you say?
3-1 Liverpool, but Liverpool kind of had a bit of a struggle on their own recently. Probably the international break came at a good time for them just to get set back up and ready to go against United, which, probably Man United right now, it's kind of one step forward, two steps back. Better performance in Sunderland, but how much are you going to read into that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's we spoke about it last week, right? Liverpool were clinging through games and getting maybe lucky with last-minute goals, but I think, if I'm really being honest, I think we're going to struggle, obviously, to win. But I think Amorim's got to go there with his mindset on trying to clinch a draw because we're playing at Anfield and it's not an easy place to pick up 3 points. And Liverpool, are, despite not in the greatest form at the moment, a very strong team. Yeah, very happy the Premier League's back this weekend. And talking about Premier League, I'm hoping you're going to take it a little bit more easy on me when it comes to the Guess Who challenge this week.
Yeah, all right. We'll see. I mean, you definitely know this player.
Okay, all right. That's clue one. You definitely know the player. Go on then. Hit me with the first two clues.
So clue number one is this player came through the Leeds United system and made his debut at the age of 17.
Leeds United, young player. I mean, Leeds were renowned, right, for bringing in some good academy talent. I'm thinking the likes of James Milner. There was Ian Hart, maybe. I'm trying to think who else was like an academy protege out of there. James Milner's the one that really springs to my mind at the moment. I'll go with James Milner to start.
Okay, clue number two. Throughout his career, he could play striker, winger, or attacking midfield, but he was hampered by some serious injury issues.
Striker. I'm going to go then maybe Alan Smith.
Okay.
I'll lock in Alan Smith on that one. Jimmy Milner's not a striker. I'll lock in Alan Smith for now. Maybe by the third clue I've nailed it, but we'll see. We'll come back obviously at the end of the episode and see if I'm getting on the struggle bus or if I'm picking up 4 points. But enough about me and you. Mark, how are you, mate? Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, great to have me back, Stu. Nice to meet Jack as well this time. So yeah, let's get cracking. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, really. A lot has happened since we last spoke, right? In terms of when we had you on before, we were talking more about the career and what you're up to in terms of the coaching. But since then, a lot has come out, and a lot of fair play to you, a lot of interviews now. I see you all over Sky Sports, BBC, and you've created a new brand. So, what you been up to?
Yeah, it's been a lot. Well, it's just not just been what's been going on now. It's almost been like a huge life changing moment. What's kind of you're seeing and everyone's seeing now is a result of years of kind of self discovery, going on my own personal journey, and yeah, I've decided to kind of create this brand, the Neurodivergent Footballer, really off the back of the lack of awareness and understanding out there of what really neurodiversity is in terms of autism, ADHD, which is my kind of lived experience. And twinning that with my football coaching and how I can use my professional football platform to spread that awareness and help others discover their own potential neurodivergency or potentially manage their neurodivergency in a more efficient way. Because the lack of understanding out there was frighteningly obvious for me, and it was quite worrying. So if I can do my bit to help one person, then that will make me very happy.
Oh, that's brilliant. And obviously, you've created the new brand in the Neurodivergent Footballer. Let's start right from the beginning. What were the motivation to create this? And obviously, you said there about helping others, but what was that light bulb moment to say, you know what, I'm going to start the Neurodivergent Footballer?
It was so I had my own diagnosis, which we'll probably come across onto in a bit. And where I was kind of looking back on my life and kind of most people with a diagnosis look back and really kind of scrutinize and go look at what's happened over the course of life, which didn't make sense. Because when you get your diagnosis, that's probably the best way of describing it. It all makes sense. A lot of stuff that really kind of presented you challenges, confused you, filled you with self-doubt, knocked your self-esteem, and yeah, made you compare to everyone else, and with that underlying feeling that you were different, but you didn't have an answer. So when I become hyper-focused after my diagnosis, I'm learning actually who I was. What does this kind of these four letters ADHD actually mean? That's when it really become apparent that I was kind of in a situation with a relationship as well, and they just didn't get me even, and the kind of the way that I saw it was that it was people saw it as a negative, but that wasn't how I was kind of trying to be perceived or how I like to be looked at, because that's not where it's coming from. So that was part of it, and just that hyper focus and learning was so obvious that there were so many other people struggling through undiagnosed or also misdiagnoses of other maybe depression, because it also spills into other areas of your life with depression, anxiety, um, many areas it can affect. So there was a real kind of wow, everyone knows what ADHD is. I admittedly did have very little knowledge as well, and I've had this lived experience for 43 years of not knowing, and my platform being a footballer, that's when I kind of Googled what other footballers have got a neurodiversity. And in terms of the men, it was minimal. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's obviously a stigma around this. And I just couldn't, I sort of, sometimes I get black and white thinking, and I just couldn't see where this was a negative. I almost saw this was how I hyper focused on my passion, and this is the reason why I achieved. And also recognized there was many people like me that I've come across in the change rooms and in and around football. And so why should it be seen as a negative? It was actually the fuel that probably fueled me to achieve so much in my career, even if I didn't recognize that kind of achievements and saw my career as a failure myself. As over time after my diagnosis, I really realized I've achieved a lot in my life, and actually I think the percentage was 0 point something of the percent of males can end up being a professional footballer for particularly for so long. So that's what my fuel was, to help others, empower others, and and just celebrate our differences, because the world is diverse, is it not? Why are we celebrating so many things in terms of our race, our kind of our sexual preference, our whether we call ourselves he, they, them, whatever it may be. These are all amazing kind of progresses in the world. And why should one thing that we all have the same is we have a brain. So why should it be just because it's on a different processing unit, like for example, like an Apple or a Windows kind of computer? Why should it be stigmatized or seen as anything different or up to the beauty of the world? We're all different, aren't we? So that's that. I'm sorry, it's simplistic as that, and it really filled me with passion. That's why I'm doing this.
I think that's fantastic, and I think if we ended the episode there, I think that would be the perfect summary of everything you've really gone through there. Because honestly, I love the analogy of Windows versus Mac. Like everyone has something different going on. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's something different going on with everyone. And I think what you've done now is embraced it. And obviously, since you've had the diagnosis of ADHD, was there a moment when you got diagnosed that you looked back at your career and looked back at certain moments that stood out to say, yeah, that was maybe a bit of a signal that I was maybe battling something?
What springs to mind is straight away is kind of it's called I know it's called emotional regulation. So I've always been a very passionate, emotional person. As the kind of boy growing up in South East London, it was something I learned to hide. I would feel people's other pain, their sadness. If I kind of watched a sad film, I'd be in tears and have to hide them tears. So looking back in terms of the emotions of things, in the emotion of the game, I loved the game. I cared about it so much. The result, I put my all into every part of my game in terms of perfectionism. And so when maybe a mistake happened, or as a defender, it's going to be natural that you're going to make a mistake that will probably lead to a loss or a goal, or even a bad performance, which being a perfectionist, anything other than perfect is a bad performance in, and a lot of footballers will resonate with that. Um, so looking back, it's almost like that. I learned to control the emotions in terms of the professionalism, but if I was aware looking back, I could have definitely managed managed the kind of ups and downs, but depending on results earlier, which I did over years, but it caused a lot of pain. And I think that awareness of yourself and your differences can be really useful to manage and almost like hone it into a positive. So that's definitely one. I've gone off a bit off track there. I can do that with my kind of ADHD brain. So we'll probably have to retouch that question again, please, Stu, because I've got a few other things that I probably could say.
No, all good. I think that the one thing in there that obviously you've spoken there is potentially and again, myself being from South East London as well, there's a characteristic to a male from that area, right? In terms of, especially involved in the sports scene and the football scene, is you're seen as being very tough, hard skinned, and you can take whatever somebody gives to you. When you were obviously in the Millwall setup, again, Millwall, the characteristic of a Millwall player is also an interesting one. Did you find it to be hard to maybe express yourself when you were going through that youth to first team level, because you would do anything to get that pro contract? So looking back, did you have to maybe hide some of these emotions?
Yeah, definitely as a young boy growing up in quite a tough area and also in the male environment and competitiveness of the professional game. Yeah, and again, this is all looking back and almost like reflection. So, trying to make sense of things. So, you obviously at the time you are who you are, um, but I think maybe with that understanding, there could have been a bit more management of actually uh, shaping the way you are on how you feel best. So it was very tough. I had to kind of be tough, and that's the nature of the beast. I was a centre back as well, so I had to kind of be a bit of a leader, quite aggressive, and that was my footballing style. But equally, I think a big part of it is knowing yourself as maybe Mark the footballer, but also Mark the person, and almost have the two separate. I don't know how to describe that best, but almost be the professional, but also don't detract from who you are and as a person, which I found can be confusing now I know as a neurodivergent person. So there is that kind of stereotype of how you should be, but equally it should. I now feel that's the beauty of getting diagnosed earlier, because you can understand these differences, um, and learn to manage them and and really kind of really be yourself. Be yourself and bring your uniqueness to the game, because I think that's what makes it the beautiful game, that we are all different as footballers and as coaches and as managers. And that's what brings that diversity of thought, diversity of style, diversity of learning, and why football's well, the number one followed game in the world.
When you look back on your time as a player, both as a professional but also as a younger man working your way up, was there something in particular that would have really helped you, or was there a person, whether it be a coach or maybe even a family member, who was able to help you with some of the issues that you faced around that neurodivergency?
I think, and this is really relevant for all coaches, really, in terms of professional game, it seems like nowadays the man management is much better, and obviously me going through the coaches badges and yourselves is, it's all about how do you get each individual to thrive, knowing we are all different, and that probably just suits a neurodivergent person even better. So coming through, it may have been that, I mean, there's not a one size fits all model, you know. That some, even though I was a centre back and kind of had to be a leader and quite tough, actually, what I was masking was quite a, I wouldn't say fragile, but quite a sensitive soul. And so sometimes when I did have, or the team didn't play, I didn't need to be ripped apart, for example, which was quite an old school thing, and will probably always be in football at the right time. For me, even though the tough exterior that I was masking, I didn't need no manager or coach to kind of tell me about my mistakes, because I'd already registered it, that would be them ruminating in my mind for 10 times harder than any manager could say, you know. So that the manager kind of coming down on you like a ton of bricks would almost like compound it even worse. And then that would, particularly with my neurodivergent brain, one thing is that you're always in the moment. You're never kind of like, it's either in the moment or you're looking to the next game. That's a very much a football thing. So I realized only when I was 28 that I would actually forget how good I was and what I'd done to get me to that point, because I was always looking forward. So it's almost going into a new game like a fresh person. So I'd be going this game with fear and fear of making a mistake and a nervousness, rather than when I got older and I was watching clips and kind of my brilliance and my goals and my tackles and what a great player I was, that I would actually go on the pitch with confidence, knowing and believing in myself. Almost I'd go on the pitch like a performer because I'd seen the evidence. Where as a neurodivergent brain, I don't know if this is for everyone, so I'm speaking on my behalf. But that reminder of how good I was, whether it by a video or whatever the means is, was really good to bring it to my front of my mind, because you're only good. The saying, "You're only as good as your last game," kind of thing was just ringing through my ears the whole time, and and it would, and also maybe learning about that it's not being arrogance, like, you know, like some self confidence, like backing yourself. It's not arrogance, and that was maybe an old school trait that was taught to us, which could have been worded better for a neurodivergent, because I was so humble to the point of self-sacrifice and would put myself down rather than put myself up, when actually you need to go in with some confidence to thrive and to believe in yourself, because it's a very high pressured environment. I thrived in it because it is that 11th hour you walk onto that pitch, you got to produce, and comes hand in hand with ADHD, that you might not have the organizational skills to plan and prepare things yourself, but when it's in the moment, you find a way. It's the best way of saying, you just find a way. I would be on the pitch and I'd find solutions. Yeah, we hadn't set up the tactics, but I'd see the solution. I'd see the passes. I'd see the gaps in the defense and the pitch. And you're doing that. And that's one of the vast skills of a neurodivergent person in sport, that resilience and never die, kind of never give up mentality as well, you know?
It's interesting when you mention that, and one question that springs to my mind is, you've played in a lot of high-stake games. You've played at Wembley. You've played in some big games. Is there any games in particular that really stand out since the diagnosis that has either maybe from a positive or a negative way?
Yeah, yeah. As well, straight away, where I'm still on my journey as well. It's fair to say that this is not a kind of overnight thing that you at 43 years old, like you get an answer and suddenly everything's rosy, because this is very much a journey now on from your answer, but now you've got to kind of unpick it and start learning to manage your day. So even when you ask me that question, a lot of things I'm trying to think of in hindsight, and I'm looking back because that's the first question that's been posed to me. So looking back in terms of kind of positives, I think many games where I wouldn't celebrate the goals, for example. So I would stay back. I would stay back on the halfway line because I knew that all my teammates were celebrating, and in that euphoria, um, I was staying back because I knew the next 5-10 minutes was the most crucial time that we had to be defending, because that's the likelihood you're going to concede a goal, and then the game might kind of change ways. So maybe thinking back is in terms, I don't know if that's a negative or a positive, but celebrating more, like celebrating their achievements in terms of a goal, and being part of the collective, rather than thinking my job was only to stop goals. But yeah, some huge games that I wished I'd enjoyed a bit more, like particularly in the Championship, playing in front of kind of like 30,000-40,000 people every week. And I definitely did. But again, coming back to that point, I believed I was meant to be there with that inner confidence. Of course, I went on that pitch uh, to produce the goods and get a 10 out of 10 kind of performance. But I just think that with that understanding that there could have been a much more fun, much more enjoyment, and less pressure in it. Negatives, particularly, you mentioned that there's many lows. Any footballer will tell you there's many lows, and they shape you. They build that resilience in you. So there is lows, but yeah, winning the league probably is a massive high. And I remember games like for Brentford when we won with one game to spare. So it was that lightness, that relief, that because we had a game to spare and we'd won the league already, it was like we could celebrate. And actually, that was a rare celebration because you don't get many times to celebrate your achievements. So I've probably totally digressed, but that's what comes to mind.
No, I think it's you've given some great answer there in terms of a lot of players, ex-players, are going to go through the highs and the lows. And when you look back at players that you've played with, players that you've played against, the diagnosis for ADHD and other parts to that are still coming out. Obviously, you're 43 years old. You've just been diagnosed ADHD. Do you think, looking back, there's maybe players that you've played with or played against that might have suffered? Like, was there signs that you go, yeah, maybe that player's similar to me? And was there anyone maybe who you maybe looked at or looked up to say, they seem very similar to me, I'm going to follow them as a role model?
I think looking back, that kind of, for example, rituals and regimes leading to games, like very, very prominent in professional football, and almost like the minority of people haven't got a ritual that they lead into the games and the morning of the game, and that's very much a kind of OCD, which is part of neurodiversity kind of thing. Going to games thinking if you didn't do that correctly, that you're already like behind. You're behind, like chance of kind of playing well. And the kind of I just, and this kind of is backed up. The PFA did a study from last season, and it suggested up to 60% of players have kind of got some like neurodivergent traits, and I kind of think maybe could it potentially be higher, because there's going to be some players I know maybe when I was younger I wouldn't have filled in that questionnaire in fear of my manager maybe seeing it or coach seeing it, and then maybe used as a weakness against me because I wanted to play every week. It's exactly the same as an injury. You hid your injuries because you didn't want to have a reason to not get picked. So same kind of thing. But yeah, there's definitely it's definitely apparent in football, and that's definitely been proved since I've come out of this diagnosis and done the media work. And there's been quite a few footballers and managers reach out to me asking questions, and yeah, quite a few have already started a diagnosis process, just through a quick conversation, because there's lots of things that we've all got traits of neurodiversity in some sort of way, but I think it's when it starts presenting negatively in your life, and that particularly after football, because almost football is just it's the perfect game for a neurodivergent person. It's kind of occupies your mind. It's fast. It's moving. It's changing. The fitness levels actually help regulate a lot of the traits of a neurodivergent condition. And then you've also got that structure, that scaffolding in your life of training, so you know where you got to be. You've got that kind of consistency, and then you've got the games where you know you're going to be. We're aiming for this game. You've got that target, and also the collective of the community as well, as a team, as a club, as a squad. So it suits perfectly. So it makes perfect sense, which why players after they come out of their career kind of maybe struggle, and it seems so obvious for me to say that, but I didn't know that. I put the end of my career down to some kind of big life changes. My dad passed away very quickly. My football career ended. I'd had a really bad divorce. So they were all kind of reasons why anyone would struggle. Plus the kind of generic term, the very broad statement, all footballers struggle at the end of their career because you can't replace it. All these kind of things really covered up actually finding out the answer. And that's why it probably took 4 or 5 years to get to the point, and how I only really come on my radar because my son's diagnosis. So it was actually through him, which I'm now learning. A lot of kind of people around my kind of age learn through their own child's discovery when they struggle at school. And that's when the kind of memories come flooding back. Oh yeah, school was difficult. I did struggle with this because I suppose that's my mindset, always looking forward, always being positive, always just getting through things. And I think particularly around adulthood with neurodiversity, you can't go anymore. You get to a limit where you can't just keep on grinding, you can't just keep on getting through. And that's when the things like burnout and overwhelm really take over your life, and can, not saying for everyone, but can present negatively in life. And they're the people I'm really trying to empower and learn about their differences, and see them as strengths and to thrive in life.
Yeah, and I think those strengths we got to turn into superpowers, and they've got to be seen as those superpowers. But I think a few of parts that you've in your answer there that really stuck with me is obviously this is a journey, and this is still a new thing to you, and obviously you've learned a lot through your diagnosis with your son as well. How important is it to have that network like you have, you and your son, who are going through a similar journey? How important is it now for people that might be listening to this and thinking, you know what, this is starting to hit home a little bit. How important is it to one, to talk to people and talk to the right people, and two, to have a network, a support network around you?
It's so important. It's so important. And actually kind of talking about the superpowers, I think being able to talk and share your vulnerabilities in itself is a superpower. Because for me personally, I that male environment, that kind of competitiveness, I wish I had a fear that if you did open up and show your true self, that it would be used against you. And that's byproduct of the kind of unknown neurodiversity, that you're quite skeptical and you think things that maybe aren't true through the kind of rejection sensitivity. But the reality is that it's the most humanly quality you could have by opening up and sharing your vulnerabilities, because we can all relate to that. That we've all had struggles, and what I've really found is that the people who really got me and understood, they didn't need a diagnosis. It was like, I was like, at first I was kind of like a little bit unhappy because they didn't really react to it. And then the penny dropped, and I think, well, Mark, it's because they love you and they accept you for who you are, regardless of a title or a tag. And equally it showed that other people aren't in your mind. So it's a huge thing to you because you struggled for so many years. But unless you express that and tell your loved ones around you, they wouldn't know. You can't. People in 2025, we're not quite in each other's heads. So to see their minds. So that talking and being around people who don't see it as a weakness. They see you for your brilliance, and actually the traits of minor neurodivergence, the uniqueness that brings is why they are my friends or my family or my partner. And there is difficult times. So being around, I'm not going to dress it up. Like, there is some times where you have self doubt and you feel a bit low, and you maybe some of the negative traits come out. And it's just having them people around you, which I have got now. I didn't have before. I felt that will just put an arm around you and just say, like, it'll pass, Mark. This is just a little period of time. Uh, and yeah, that's so important, because I definitely had an example of where I wasn't understood, and it would have been as simple as an arm around my shoulder in them in them times. And most neurodivergent people, they'll tell you, you already feel too much. You already feel like a burden, or you're too much for someone, or you're less than. And so people, what I've really found is then people really care about me and close to me. It's not asking too much. It's actually brought them closer to me, that I will get a little text here and there that I'm on their mind now. They say, "You okay?" And that text in itself, it shouldn't be seen as a weakness, like you need to be mothered kind of thing. And that's what kind of some people can see it as. It's not that at all. It's just, how would you treat your best friend? How would you treat the person you loved? It's just that, yeah, it's just that care. That's as simple as it is. And I really think that is where we can roll into football as coaches as well. It's just that want us to be there for our players. And it's not asking too much. It might be that arm around the shoulder when they've gone a bit quiet, because my thoughts are 24/7. They don't stop. I thought that was normal. So when I go a bit quiet, that's usually a sign that kind of I'm maybe gone like a little bit too much in my thought spiral. I now know off the back of the diagnosis that I can catch myself. So knowledge is power. And that me knowing this now, learning so much, is so powerful, because I can actually catch myself and go, whoop, no, we're not going there, Mark. And I can be kinder to myself. And I've learned this kind of through some counseling technique, to say, I notice, rather than being judgmental where I would have ripped myself apart before. I just say, I notice thoughts and feelings of, you're feeling lonely, for example. It could be quite lonely. And just being kind to myself and just say, that's normal, Mark, that's part of your condition. It will pass. And then you go 2-3 minutes later, you're back in the game, kind of thing, that you've let that low go. And so I think just that I've got a bit too far, but that network of people around you is really, yeah, don't underestimate how helpful people around you can be. And they want to be there for you. Don't ever feel that you're a burden. They actually want to be there for you. And they see the love in you, in your heart, and the truth. They see the truth. They're not blinded by the kind of how the kind of condition may present externally.
It's fascinating what you've said there in terms of it's so important to have those people around you. And there's now as we mentioned, 2025, there's more of an awareness of what is happening, and mental health, neurodivergence. Have you noticed through a comparison between when you grew up in a youth system and going into the professional game to how it is now in professional academies, there's more of an education for coaches. There's more of an acceptance that coaches are aware of this and maybe aren't as harsh towards the player who might have an attention disorder, who might not be focused, who might be overly focused. Have you seen a difference in how maybe academies and football clubs are handling it now?
I think, yeah, just it is definitely on the way to getting better. I've had chats with the Premier League in terms of the player care departments and the education, and they're really keen to learn, and they're pushing things forward brilliantly. And it was just, the game has evolved in terms of our kind of like the 21s and below. And so it is being seen as a forward-thinking game. For the first team will always be a results business, so it's a little bit different. But it definitely is different, because when I was younger, kind of ADHD almost didn't exist, or it was you were seen as the naughty child, or which obviously I'm now coming across a lot of older people who are dealing with a lot of trauma because of the way they were treated in school. And in particular myself, I've got memories of not understanding why I was in the teacher's kind of office facing the wall, and sitting looking left. I know why he's here. He's like broke the bookcase. So I'm just making something up, But what have I done? Why am I here? I don't know. But yeah, the game is definitely improving. The player care departments, the education, the coaches themselves, and this is really what the PFA are really pushing in terms of qualifications, having a neurodivergent part to it. And hopefully I'm going to be part of that kind of new learning and pushing it forward. And that's partly why I'm doing this as well. It's not just for football, it's for sport, it's for the broader scheme and the wider communities, because there is just that understanding. And however much of understanding it's almost of I just think it's just common sense. It's that black and white for me, that we're all different, and as coaches we have to know how to get the best out of our players. It's going to benefit us as coaches, it's going to benefit them as individuals. And I know full well I love coaching, not for the actual coaching side of it. I love seeing that glow from a player to kind of be confident, growing confidence, and kind of improve and develop. And we wouldn't be in this coaching game if that wasn't part of it. It just seems so natural to be just part of that line of thinking that this is the way this player thinks. Obviously, the youth game is a little bit different because you're going to have younger players who aren't going to understand these emotions. They're not going to understand how they react. They're going to have that shame afterwards. And I think maybe my unknown neurodivergence is what makes me a great coach, is that I do have that patience, which working with neurodivergent children, which I do as well, it gives you that patience, and definitely it opens I took a job at the Brit School, and one of the main reasons I took the school, which is a performing arts school in Southeast London, obviously the Brit Awards, it started after that. I took it because I wanted to work with that diversity of minds and interests, and to expand my coaching abilities, you know. So I see it as just as that when you work with you're coming back to football, these players are there because they love the game. How can you motivate and challenge them players? You should have the skills, or if you don't, learn how to upskill to challenge every single player on the pitch, whether they're neurodivergent or not. You may have someone at age 10 who's kind of a bit behind the group. How are you going to lift that player up and bring them up to their potential? You may have a player who's absolutely too good for that group. How are you going to still challenge them? So I see it in the same mold as that, really. How are you going to help deal with that player when he's overwhelmed? He needs maybe a timeout when he can see the goal or something like that, and he's going to like kind of go into kind of overwhelm and bend that externally. It's just that little bit of knowledge, and if we can all be a bit more understanding, then we can all improve as the game of football, I believe.
Yeah, and you touched on coach education there and getting involved with that, which is, exciting to see what happens there in the future. We have a lot of coaches who listen to the podcast. So if you were going to give one or two pieces of practical advice to a coach, what would the kind of one or two kind of key points be?
I think if you don't understand something, and it comes back a bit to the relationship kind of things and people around you, is don't assume. Like take that, I call it a pause moment. I try to do it when I kind of might go to a negative place myself in my life. Just take a pause, take a breath, and assess the situation, because it might not be what your initial thought goes to. You don't have to make like kind of when you're coaching, you see kind of like a mistake. You're playing, let's say a keep ball or something like that, and they make a pass the wrong way. You don't have to jump in every time, let them learn, let the ball be the teacher, let them learn. So it's just the same as that. Take that pause moment, assess the situation, and think, do you know what? I've got that bit of knowledge. I know Jimmy can be very emotional and highly strung. How can I build him up? Let that game be playing. Can I go and have a little kind of walk over to him and have a little whisper, a little pat on the back? Because like I come back to before about relationships, that little pat on the back might be what he needs, because he may have just hit that pass. He may be me. He may be me where I've hit that pass 2 centimeters, not to that person's right foot, because I wanted them to go on there. And now he's been super critical of himself, because all he's heard his whole life is how he's not good enough, how he's the mistakes. Always the mistakes get highlighted, and just that a little bit of understanding, and maybe coming on our website, watching our podcast, because I've been reached out to so many grassroots parents about how their children are being coached by the kind of managers, and a lot of them are volunteers, aren't they? So they're just parents giving up their time for free. So I'm not knocking them at all, but it just really inspires me that I want to get out to the grassroots teams as well and have some education around that as well. And I've already spoken to someone about that within our area, Bromley, which actually someone very close to where Stuart lived. So there's people out there, and there's lots of good people in football and the SCN world that are really trying to drive this forward. And I think it's just a matter of time before it really explodes.
Yeah, I love that answer of just taking a second to think about it sometimes. And I think as coaches, and all of us as coaches on here, we've all probably at some point been guilty of maybe jumping in too quick or jumping onto a player who's made a mistake too quick. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never done it, because I have. But I think listening to this conversation it might not be attention disorder, it might not be something else. But I think from a coaching perspective, just to sometimes take a moment to take in all of the information, take in the environment. And I think what you've spoken there in terms of players know when they've made a mistake, and we don't always have to jump down their throat to point this mistake out. One thing that I've found in youth sports especially is the battle of parent sideline behaviour. You're playing a game of a weekend, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well. Parents on the sideline probably want to win the games more than the kids do at times. How important do you think it is? I know you've spoken about educating the coaches, the volunteers, the parent volunteers. How important is it to maybe educate parents in youth sport?
Yeah, and this goes out to the wider communities, because if we can kind of get into the clubs and educate the coaches, educate the teams, they can then maybe put out resources for the parents to read and make it simplify it for them, just so there's that little bit of understanding. So when they might go to have that reaction, because football is a very emotional sport, it's very passion driven. It's why we all love it. And I don't think we're ever going to stop parents, parents kind of uh, make it get a bit too passionate, because we're all different. But what I really try to do with my academy, as you know, Stu, is create the environment. That's why I think that's so important in terms of whether you're coaching a little grassroots team, is that you're creating the environment, the learning environment for your children. You might not be able to control the away team's parents, um, because we can be antagonising, but it is creating that kind of awareness. Maybe when your away team come, you give them, like, I've seen a lot of kind of boards, haven't they, where they put out and say kind of respect and things like that. So I think it's just that patience, that this is not the World Cup, and maybe I'm gifted that I've had a career in it, that I don't see it as that pressurized, but it is heaping pressure on it. I try to talk to our parents when they're shouting sometimes. I just say, I want the players to make the decisions. Because if we're continually telling them what to do, it's us who's telling them what to do, and they're not learning. They're doing what they think they should do, opposed to what they see and problem solving themselves in the moment, which is very much command style, which I grew up on. But the game has evolved, and so we need a hybrid of both. Yeah, so it could be another whole podcast, that one on the parents, couldn't it? But I think it's just they it's always in good intention. Parents obviously always want the best for their kids, but maybe it's just a little workshop or something like that. Some CPD on with some parents coming along and or online, and just again slowly but surely, and then the more, if I'm sure if a parent really gets their eyes open to how beneficial this kind of things we're talking about can be for their kid, then they're more likely to buy in. So again, it's not assuming they know. Again, the same thing with the neurodivergent mind. It's not assuming that they get it. So it's just that communication. I think it always comes back to communication. Explain. That's what I do now more. I'm less embarrassed. Like when you don't understand something, you keep quiet sometimes, don't you, to not make yourself look silly or inferior. But now I'm not ashamed of that. I will ask a question. I'll say, I don't quite understand. What did you mean? So it's that same kind of line in terms of helping people understand whether they're neurodivergent or not.
I think that last point you just said is important, because how many times as coaches and coaches listening to this have we brought a group in, explained maybe a drill, an exercise, a pattern, and there's a player at the front who's like, no, I don't really know what's going on here. How important is it then for us as coaches to check for understanding that players do understand what we're trying to get across? And how important is it for them to feel comfortable to put their hand up and say, coach, I'm not quite what you're saying there. Can you just explain it again? It's about that environment, right? And having that safe space.
Yeah, definitely comes straight back to the environment. And even after you've kind of done it, I will always say, do you understand? And occasionally when I'm in a real kind of open-minded, free-minded space, and I've not got my own stresses of my life coming onto the football pitch with me coaching, because that happened early on in my journey of coaching, that I want to help them so much that I actually create the stress and create the kind of pressure on them, where in times when I'm really kind of like calm, I will definitely overcheck. When I'm going in there with a smile on my face, literally feeling light, that's the best coaching environment. And I'll say, and I will go even further, and I'll say, you sure you understand? Because you do know. If you don't say that, we won't know. And equally, you won't understand for yourself. You can only kind of learn this and know what we're trying to help if you get it. So if you don't get it, it's no problem at all. Please ask. We want you to ask. And then sometimes I say, like, I'll be more angry, disappointed if you don't ask. So they really feel kind of comfortable. I particularly say that when they kick the ball off the pitch as well, like when they clear a ball. I say, no, 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 no. I'll be more angry at you kicking the ball off the pitch than trying something, because I want to see you try some brilliance, and I'm going to praise you for that. So when you kind of back it up with that reward of actually taking a risk or asking a question and feeling uncomfortable, you get that buy-in to that kind of coach-player side of things as well, which, again, I don't like kind of talking positive about myself, but a lot of people do say that's one of my strengths. And who knows, has that come through my own experience in life of having my ADHD and not knowing about it, that I didn't understand, so I make sure other people understand. So I don't know, but yeah, it's all just good learning for everyone.
No, I think during this whole episode, you've given so much practical advice to players, to coaches, to parents listening to this. I think as we start to wrap up this conversation, if there's a listener or somebody watching this going, you know what, I'm starting to understand this a little bit more, maybe from their personal journey, how would you then encourage a listener or somebody listening to this to go and talk and find out about their own development and find out if they have a diagnosis?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that the misconception and the myth is that ADHD is a one-size-fits-all thing. It is literally unique to every individual based upon your life experiences. There is no one-size-fits-all. And just because you listen to something to me and one part doesn't resonate, that doesn't mean a thing. It might be someone in your life who's got ADHD. The symptoms and the ways it plays out might be completely different to you. Doesn't mean you haven't got kind of a neurodivergence going on. So diagnosis as well is completely unique to you as well. I went for a diagnosis. I had the kind of the funds to pay for a private diagnosis, but equally, some people don't need a diagnosis. It's totally personal to you and what you feel is best. But it's so helpful. It's so helpful. It's almost like you're partially, I suppose you were kind of like, you'd see with kind of a blurry vision, and now you've got kind of glasses on and you can see the reality. So many things in your life make sense, and you can really start exploring what it means and honing into what the strengths are, not focusing on the negatives, managing the negatives, and really owning that your uniqueness and your differences are actually your strengths. Um, so yeah, if I really encourage, if even if there's kind of like a, 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 something you've resonated with us talking, or something you've resonated that you've seen on our social medias, or on one of our interviews on or our YouTube channel, yeah, definitely start asking the questions yourself. And there's plenty of good kind of organisations around, and we've got a few resources and books and audio books actually on our website, which I found really useful. So you can visit the website, and that it was a bit of a minefield out there. So don't be put off. And that was the whole reason I created the website, because even though I had the money for a private diagnosis, a psychologist to kind of teach me a bit, it was still very confusing. So yeah, I've made it really simple in terms of medical professionals on what they are, what that means. We've got the books. What I found the most helpful. You might not be into books, but I found I don't barely ever finish a book. But when it comes to this topic, I finished about 10 of them because I was so interested in it. But audio books equally as good. So yeah, I definitely encourage to ask the question, because there's so many myths and kind of lack of understanding out there to what neurodiversity really is. And it doesn't mean that you haven't got it, even if it means you might have a byproduct of it. There's so many byproducts of it, and particularly women, there's misdiagnosis of various things. Women are the most underdiagnosed because they hide it so well, and we mask so well. Well, not we, I'm not a woman, but in terms of neurodivergence, we mask it so well. So yeah, definitely I'd encourage it. If you've resonated with anything, start asking the questions, and kind of looking into things a lot more deeply, because it can really make a huge difference in your life.
And I think the first place that most people should start is obviously your website. How can people listen to this use you as a resource?
Yeah, so on Instagram, we've got Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. We've got it under the ND Footballer, obviously short for the Neurodivergent Footballer. And then we've got thenDfootballer.com, which is the website. And we've also got the Neurodivergent Footballer on YouTube, which hopefully we'll be releasing our first episode next week, with a bit more of a deep dive into my story and around football. And then we're going to be following up with, professional medical people within the neurodivergent space, hopefully some footballers, male and female sports people, and yeah, really sharing awareness and understanding through other people's stories. But I've said from day one, this is not about me or this is about me empowering others to kind of learn about their differences and make changes and positive improvements in their lives.
Well, having been lucky enough to work alongside you with your academy back in South East London, I can certainly say you're doing everything well, you're doing everything right, and I'm really looking forward to this journey and watching you grow this area and affect others. Jack, any final words from you?
Useful for a lot of players, parents, coaches, and I think everyone's going to be jumping on the website to find out more, because I think it is something that is so common. It's going to affect every coach. Every team's going to have players in there where a more educated coach or parents would have a positive impact on that kid. And like you say, it's not necessarily about are they going to make it to the professional game or not. It's soccer being such a great, or football being such a great outlet for those players to use. So a good starting point for information, I think, and a lot more information to come from it.
Yeah, very excited to see your podcast come out, see all your learning exercises come out. And as a coach myself, and I'm sure Jack would say the same, I want to learn more about this so then I can affect it. And I think being in coach education, if we can affect one coach, that's affecting many children and many players out there. So fair play to you, Mark. And I think you've given some great advice on this podcast. But before we let you go, I might need a little bit of help with these clues. But I've locked in Alan Smith after the first clue, Jack. I am in doubt though. I think I might not be getting the right answer here. So third clue, give it to me so I can see if I'm going to change my mind.
So in the 1999 to 2000 season, this player won the PSA Young Player of the Year.
I think you got it right, Stu.
I'm between two players. I'm between Alan Smith, but I'm also leaning now because you mentioned about being a winger. Alan Smith wasn't really a winger, so I'm thinking Harry Kewell. So I'm between those two players because I don't know if Alan Smith would have won the PFA Young Player of the Year award. I'm going to go. I have a sneaky suspicion Harry Kewell won that award, so I'm going to change my answer and go Harry Kewell.
Locking in?
I'm locking that in. That'll be for clue 3. So give me clue 4.
Clue 4, it was played for Leeds United and Liverpool in the Premier League before moving to Galatasaray.
Harry Kewell.
And then last clue is played 58 times for Australia.
Definitely not Alan Smith. I'm very happy I changed that. So what's that me getting there? 3 points?
Yeah, that answer is Harry Kewell. It's a 3-pointer.
See, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So by the end but come May, we'll see what the scoreline is there. Mark, did you have a suspicion it might be Harry Kewell?
I was kind of down the thinking of you, yeah, Alan Smith and Harry Kewell, and yeah, it become more obvious them last few questions, didn't it?
Yeah, this. I think that was a good one from you, Jack. It definitely got me thinking and got the listeners thinking.
That was a great Leeds team back in the day as well.
They produced some players, didn't they?
Yeah, that was
fantastic.
I think they got to the semis of the Champions League, right?
Yeah, Mark, did you ever play against Leeds in those days?
Yeah, I played against Leeds a lot. I'm just trying to think who was there. Yeah, I played against them in the Championship quite a bit. We had quite a big one actually because Dennis Wise was our kind of player coach, and he'd just left them under kind of controversial times. And yeah, our coach had to get police escorted in quite heavy, and the fans wanted blood that day. And yeah, it was a pretty cool game at Ellen Road.
Well, we'll have to continue that story in the third episode in the trilogy of getting you onto the podcast. But from myself and Jack, we thank you obviously for opening up and sharing your journey, and we wish you the best of luck with everything.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me.
1, 2.